for me.
Oh, yeah.
Is there somebody else coming?
Yeah, there's Mark. I wrote a question. Hey Jeff, I wrote my question.
Not feeling the best. I will come to you.
Call over and like, is there someone here? Oh wait.
I feel like there's no way I can't call down the station line. It'd be like pulse on the ground. I don't know what to do.
They'll say, let's just leave.
Is there somebody available to call? He said lights aside. Before he went down.
Yeah, I'll look for that and then I'll post it now.
Mic test 1, 2, mic test. It's not good.
It got quiet in here, and it's right at 6. You guys are phenomenal. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out to the City of Independence Health Department's Town Hall on Mental Health. My name is Diane Egger, and I am the Assistant Director for the Health Department, and I will be moderating this evening. We will be be taking questions or comments for the panelists, and we'll be taking them from the audience, of course. So if you have a question for one of the panelists or all of the panelists, you could either come up to the microphone and ask your question, or you can write it out on the cards that are provided at the back table, and I will ask them. So whatever is comfortable for you. But before we start, let's just get a few ground rules in place. If we could try to stay on topic of mental health, try to focus on that topic. While someone's speaking, of course, if they're speaking at the microphone and the panelists, please don't interrupt them. Let's appreciate diverse opinions. There's a lot of different opinions on the topic. We'll end the discussion at 7:30. No repeated questions, please. And raise your hand to talk, like I said, and then you can come up to the microphone after I've acknowledged you and ask your question, okay? All right. With that said, I would like to recognize some distinguished guests in the audience this evening. The Mayor of Independence, Eileen Weir. We have 1st District Council Member, applause. 1st District Council Member John Perkins. And 4th District Council Member Dan Hobart. I think that's it. Did I leave anyone out you're all distinguished, but these are the elected officials, so. So according to the National Alliance on Mental Health and Mental Illness, 1 in 5 people have or will receive a mental illness diagnosis in their lifetime. That makes addressing mental illness vital in our community. Part of addressing mental illness is erasing the stigma that can come with a mental illness diagnosis. And mental illness is similar, as we know, to any other chronic health condition, like diabetes or heart issues, and it can be treated, and people can live full and meaningful lives. So that's what we're here to talk about this evening. We want your feedback, questions, and opinions to inform us as the city and to help guide the city on what you would like to see in the community and what the needs are that you see out there. So that said, I would like to read the bios of our esteemed panelists in alphabetical order. They're sitting in alphabetical order, so I will read them off in alphabetical order. David Abraham. David has worked for the police department since 2004, and in 2007 was appointed as a police officer. In 2009, he attended his first Mid-America Crisis Intervention Team training class, and he continued his education in crisis intervention. In 2016, Officer Abraham assumed the duties of the Independence Police Department's full-time CIT officer, working together with numerous mental health, substance use, and houseless agencies across the metro area. Rio Corbin. Rio has been a psychologist with the Independence School District for the past 5 years and has worked in public education since 2011. Currently, she serves on the board for the Missouri Association of School Psychologists as the webmaster and is a member of the Junior Service League of Independence. Christina Heinen. Christina has held numerous positions within the city since starting in 2007. She is currently serving as the health director for the city and is a member of the Incident Command Team. She holds a Master's of Public Health from the University of Missouri-Columbia and a Master of Forensic Sciences from George Washington University. As a native of Independence, Missouri, she has a deep commitment to improving the quality of life for the residents of Independence. Paul Leninger. Paul has been a Missouri licensed paramedic in the Kansas City area for 30 years and is the current Operations and Communications Manager for American Medical Response and Independence. Paul has been at AMR since October of 2014 and was previously the Assistant Chief of Emergency Medical Services with the Central Jackson County Fire Protection District. Julie Pratt. Julie is President and CEO of Comprehensive Mental Health Services. Ms. Pratt has been employed with Comprehensive Mental Health for 15 years, with just over 3 years in her current position. She has served over 25 years in the behavioral health field, with 22 of those years in community mental health in the state of Missouri. She is well known in the region and state through her participation in efforts to raise awareness and provide solutions to behavioral health issues. Ms. Pratt has a master's degree in counseling and psychological services and is a licensed professional counselor with extensive experience in crisis services and adults dealing with severe and persistent mental illness. So thank you, panelists, for coming this evening. With that said, let's start the discussion. Who would like to ask a question or who has a comment? Who would like to be first? Yes.
I'll always be first.
Yes. Would you want to go, or maybe we can hear you? If you want to go to the microphone,
I'll
maybe.
go to the microphone.
Thank you.
Lori, you might have to switch it off. Oh, now you're asking. Hang on, up at the up at the top, that side, right there, right where your fingers are, up.
Hello. All right, my question is actually for Rio. We share faith, and thinking about positive mental health, I'd like to know what you think are some of the ways that we can incorporate faith-based belief and healing towards positive mental health, especially in light of the recent death of an Independence police officer and many who are dealing with grief and the need for something that's higher than ourselves.
Good question, Maureen. I think something that is really important and also really valuable about Independence as a community is that we have a lot of churches that work together. Even if we don't align with our beliefs, they are constantly coming together to do different things for our community. And so I think that partnering with those churches could be really powerful in talking through mental health and how that can kind of cross lines with faith. And I know Revive Church is one example of a church that sees the value in mental health supports and then also supporting schools and different parts of our community. So I think we have a really great opportunity because we have so many churches that already partner together so well. It's just getting everyone to have the conversation about it.
Follow up, how do you think we can bring those conversations together?
I think that's also a good question. I think that figuring out when, I know that there's like a group of churches on like Winter Road that meet pretty regularly. And so I think talking to those church leaders, I think having events like this is really helpful and making sure that people know that we're talking about these things. I think the best thing to do is start a conversation, and I feel like with mental health, the stigma is still there, but we're having more conversations and it's more of a discussion across the board for people. And so just being able to say, hey, have you thought about mental health in your church group or congregation, and what are we doing to support our church members, and then how are we as church members supporting our community in that aspect.
To add to that a little bit, there are large organizations that are working with churches on various trainings. I know there have been regional trainings on crisis response and how the clergy fit into that. So you may not be aware of what your church is doing in the community in regards to mental health. So you just be asking. But I know there have been large movements, and there have been regional trainings for clergy and how they may be able to help respond in mental health crisis situations.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. We've got various public entities represented here and various private entities represented here. So, do you think you will all work together? Are there programs or ideas that you have to all work together toward the same goal? Or if not, what do you think the role of your organizations are in addressing this issue? Mental illness and accompanying homelessness.
So I'll jump in there and say about 5-6 years ago, we had a community health improvement plan work group that many of us served on, or at least our organizations served on. And it was focused on that mental health aspect and how we could work together, because we recognized that although we wouldn't necessarily have a lot of abilities on our own, we could amplify those concerns and our voices by working together and sharing those same messages and making sure that we were all sharing that same message, working towards the same goal together in order to amplify our abilities. I mean, in my mind, restarting one of those groups and meeting on a regular basis would be a good start. I know we had Independence Ministerial Alliance serve there. We could bring others in to start working back on all of us working towards that same goal, setting those goals, working together. And tonight is part of that work to figure out what those goals should be, so that if we do have the opportunity to reform that, we can all work together in the same direction.
I can speak to that a little bit further. I have worked specifically with each of these individuals, with the exception of Rio, and I have worked with her organization extensively. And to be real specific, Comprehensive Mental Health Services works very closely with the Independence Police Department in regards to their crisis intervention training. And we work closely with all of our area police departments. All of the community mental health centers in the Kansas City area do that. We have a very close relationship with the Independence Police Department, and I think we have a very good relationship. We've added co-responders to work with the police departments, work within dispatch to help alleviate a lot of the increased calls that are coming into 911 for mental health needs and how we might be able to help address that. We work a lot with the schools. We partner and help to provide response when they're doing the signs of suicide training every year, along with the various other things that we can provide support and assistance with in responding to crisis situations at the request of the schools. I've been talking to Christina with different ways that we may be able to help with health department and things that are coming up and planning on this year. And I know Paul and I met a few years ago to discuss an idea I had that did never quite come to fruition, but we were just having a brief conversation about things that we may be able to do in the community as far as outreach, along with some different paramedic type activities. So there's always those conversations on how we might be able to partner and coordinate services better for the community with what their organizations do, and along with the mental health services that we can provide and support on the back end of that.
And if I could, I'd just add a little bit from our perspective of the emergency medical response providers. There are programs all over the country called Community Paramedicine, and that kind of focuses on exactly what we're talking about tonight, and that's taken paramedics who are experienced in the field, who have a good, well-rounded understanding of the social impacts of what patients are going through. And rather than just transport these patients to the hospital, where that may not be the best mode of care for them, the community paramedics are actually spending time one-on-one with these individuals, getting them hooked up into the different services such as Julie and comprehensive mental health, to get them into the right areas without overburdening our ED. So that's one model that has proven very successful across the United States. So we've stuck our toe in the water on that right now. We're kind of focusing right now with substance abuse. So we've teamed up with Epic and ComCare. So we have a particular individual within our organization that looks at incident reports that come in, and then we do referrals to get these individuals into treatment. So kind of the mode that we work under is that if we run a particular call, we try to get our EMTs and paramedics at the time of the incident to get them referred, so that they're getting that follow-up within 24 hours. If we're not able to do that because the patient's not stable or coherent enough to provide that consent, then we'll follow up at the 24-hour mark and try to get them in that way. And then if that doesn't work, then through a retrospective chart review, we try to find those patients and then recontact them. So we've had some success with that. And so once we enroll our citizen into that has a substance abuse issue, they usually have a counselor following up with them within 24 hours. So that's something that we're already doing. We just need to grow it for subsets of our population outside of those with substance abuse issues.
Can I add something for the school district perspective? Something that our school district does is we have social workers that are called family school liaisons, and so they help get families connected with different resources, and a lot of times that includes mental health resources, and so they're a really great resource that we have that kind of helps bridge that gap between the school and then getting community resources and accessibility. Something else that we have are a couple partnerships with different counseling groups, so Great Circle, Preferred Family, some of our buildings are able to have students get services while they're at school. So that's something that I think is really great that the school district does to try and make mental health services more accessible.
I have a two-part question. Officer Abram, can you give a brief overview of what the CIT program is and why people should ask for a CIT trained officer during a crisis?
So CIT program is mental health working with police. So it was designed in Memphis, Tennessee after a bad shooting involving a mentally ill person. So at that point, Memphis created a program where everybody was coming to the table and discussing problems that they were having in the community and using mental health professionals to assist police when they're going on those type of calls. We've taken that a few steps forward with the addition of our co-responders, as well as our community behavioral health liaisons, and my position. So my position, what I do is I go out and do follow-up with people. So there may be a mental health crisis. Once the crisis is resolved, or there's a continued crisis that can't be resolved with just a simple involvement of either the hospitals or mental health, we go together and try to help that person find services, whether it's through mental health court or other diversionary programs to try to keep people out of the mainstream system and get them into behavioral health services where they can benefit and prosper instead of just continue down a rabbit hole.
CIT training was probably one of the best training classes I've ever been through, so thank you for that. And then mayor, council members, whoever, is there a way that we can better educate our community on this resource that is available? And that way the officers that are actually trained for CIT are the ones that show up on scene when it is definitely a mental health crisis?
So one of the things that we've been working toward, not just as a local CIT council, but at the state council level, is trying to get CIT more well known within our communities. I know there have been discussions about doing some TV advertisements and things like that. I don't know how far those have gotten. However, forums like this are a perfect example of how we can push CIT. Our dispatchers, when they have CIT officers available or when the co-responders are working, they try to get them involved in the calls so it's not just law enforcement going. There's that added presence of someone who may be able to actually connect them with the service instead of we just send them to the hospital and the situation's temporarily resolved. We put a Band-Aid on it. That's basically what happens.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Please.
Hi, so I have a homeless outreach ministry here in Independence, and we do close interactions with the homeless out here. A lot of that is mental health issues. Do you guys have like a good program, a good solution, something that we can do as outreach to help them get off the streets, get into some sort of mental, help? A lot of times we have better luck talking to them than the police officers do. I mean, we've had IPD call us and ask us to go out and talk to, these camps and stuff like that. Is there something we can do better, or just ideas on what we can do to help them become, back into society?
I don't know if I have anything to tell you that there's anything you can do better. I mean, keep doing what you're doing. We have recently been given additional dollars and allocation from the Department of Mental Health to add 2 positions within our agency, housing liaisons, to add to what you're doing. I know Independence has outreach officers that you've probably talked to help in your outreach and helping engage people and checking on them, and then our housing liaisons would be another link in to help with that, to help engage them in services, to help link them into resources that will be available. I think, what is missing out in Eastern Jackson County in general are drop-in center activities for places for people to go, where they could take a shower, they could connect with a wide variety of community resources, not just mental health, but entitlements, and other things that would be beneficial, and general shelters. There's a lot of work, time and effort involved in that. I know there's a lot of discussion being had on how to help address the problem that you're helping with and what the work that you're doing, but I don't know that I can say or give you any advice on what to do any differently or better. We have people that go and hit those camps as well to offer services and check on people. It's a difficult area to help and provide services in. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I have a question for a police officer. Maybe there's like an event or something that I'm not aware of, but is there possible in the future where a police department can make a big event for all police officers in different police departments in Missouri or Kansas to come together and talk about their mental health also and the calls that they go on to? Because in my opinion, talking about it to the coworkers it's kind of like a taboo in a way, because we don't want to get judged, we don't want to be thought about otherwise, but I feel like it's a lot more comfortable if we talk about it to other to other police officers who are in our shoes, but we don't see them on a daily basis.
So there's a big push at the state level of our well-being, both at the state level and at the local level. Obviously, everyone here knows about the recent loss of our officer. And since then, we're all mandated to go to a debriefing where we sit around and we talk about the incident and work through the incident as a group. And I can tell you, having attended one today, it's a very beneficial process. We as a department now have a peer support team. It's a group of officers who have special training to help support other officers and help connect officers who are struggling with different resources that can help them. This is a big push across the state, not just the local level, not just our department, but it's happening all over. Highway Patrol has one, Kansas City has one, a lot of other agencies around are creating them and working together. For example, for ours, our people didn't do our own debriefs. It was done by other agencies coming in, don't know our people. It's no rank, you sit around, you talk about what's going on, what happened, specifically what your role was in the incident, and how did we move forward from this incident.
David, if I could just a second, to push past even just the loss of the officer recently, our first responders in general have a very traumatic job, and what they deal with on a day in and day out basis is very traumatic. So just in dealing with their day-to-day jobs is stressful, and they need to be addressing that. So we know there's incidents that may occur, like the loss of this officer recently, but ensuring that our first responders, our police officers, our fire departments, our ambulance providers are getting their needs addressed so they can continue to do their jobs, but that they can also go home to their families and they can live their lives happily and address the trauma that they see day in and day out is super important. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'll go one step further with that. There are programs out there, the Battle Within being one of them. It's a group for first responders, military professionals, people who've seen trauma and done those kind of things to go to. It's a week-long class where you go and you stay and you work through different things and try to, as a group, and it's a small group of about 10 people, work through the program, go through different types of therapies, different things that can benefit you, different ways to cope, and it's a very great program. There's several different ones out there, but that's the big one around here right now.
Anyone else want to ask a question? Yes, please.
My apologies if it was asked before I was able to come in, but Julie was talking about something and it made me think of possible next steps. I believe all of you have a position on the city command staff team or the emergency support function mass care team for Eastern Jackson County. And these questions about the vulnerable populations and the homeless lead me to be solution-minded in what we can do in our next steps. So is there anything that you can do to provide services for those agencies that are already set up and ready and prepared for a drop-in center or mental health caseworkers and management? If so, what are our next steps as a department and a city? And would you be interested in collaborating and coordinating on that?
Thank you. It's kind of a general question, but I think the answer, at least for us, is yes. So Christina mentioned before about the chip or the chop?
It was the chip.
It's a chip, okay. So the chip process and what we identified there, and unfortunately, this sounds kind of like an excuse, but at least for public safety, COVID has really derailed a lot of what we wanted to get done. With us having the inability for so many months to meet in person, it's really almost made us lose a year to a year and a half of what we wanted to do and the goals we wanted to achieve. So I think she's kind of hit the nail on the head that we just need to start those processes back up. So, you know, kind of one thing about EMS is kind of like the fire services, we're stuck in tradition. And unfortunately, we're kind of slow to realize that tradition is not always the best. And so we are finding out that there's a lot of alternative models of care for people that make a whole lot more sense. Since EMS, you know, started in Missouri, it was kind of in the early 70s, it's always been what we call a you call, we haul mentality, and the hospital was the solution for everything. And we're learning, and we now know that is not the solution for everything. They're great at what they do, but they're not the best solution for everything that we're seeing in the field. So I think, you know, getting community paramedics out there, getting our folks to be more mindful of a less straightforward approach. You know, not one size fits all. Not everybody needs an IV or a medication or a breathing treatment. Sometimes they just need someone to talk to and a referral to get them in for a debrief or for some mental counseling, and that's all they need. We're actually somewhat doing a disservice to our patients when we take them to a hospital where they get, you know, an ER bill for something that could be easily managed by Julie and her team. So that's what we're seeing is we've done it the same way for so long. We've now identified it's the wrong way of doing it. It's just finding, unfortunately, a lot of it is funding too, from the federal and state level for certain programs, and competing for those dollars to make that work. So we know it's the right way to go. It's just a matter of getting ourselves back together and doing that. So we are identifying that needs there.
So you're really just asking if you have a building ready to go, what are we willing to do to help in that?
Are there any barriers to prevent that from happening? If so, what are they?
To like getting a building?
No, to coordinating and collaborating and taking next steps to move forward.
For like us being in the building there?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Thank you. And one last question. Are there any funds from ARPA and the health department that are designated to help with these issues?
So the city formed back in, I'll sit back a little bit, back in June, when discussing ARPA funds at a city council meeting, they formed a health department committee to look at department operations. That committee is still meeting. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. They are public meetings. You guys are all welcome to attend. I want to say it's 2:30 in the afternoon at City Hall. We have been discussing those funds that were set aside and voted on and how those funds should be used. So mental health absolutely has come up in every single meeting we've had so far. We are continuing to discuss what those health department operations should be and how those funds should be best used. So it's discussed, it's not decided.
Thank you all for what you do.
Follow up on that question, I may be misinformed, but it's my understanding that there are buildings that are available, but because of all the zoning and the restrictions and codes and all of that kind of thing that people have to do, is there any, do you have any power over any of that? I don't know who sets the codes, I don't know who sets the requirements, and as I say, I may be misinformed. But my understanding is part of the reason that the Unity Center is not able to have any people is because they have to get rid of the asbestos. Now, there may be nothing you can do about that. But I'm wondering if rezoning some places, or if there's some kind of creative way that some of these buildings that are empty, we have a lot of empty buildings in Independence. And I know it's more than just a building. You have to have staff, you have to have all kinds of things to have people housed. I understand that. But you've got to start with a building if you're going to have, or tiny houses, or I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm here. I want to find out what your thoughts are on this.
Would you like me to be completely transparent with you on part of the problem?
Yes.
Please. The community is not very welcoming and open to having some of the services that are needed where they would need to be needed and in some of those open buildings.
Yeah, I
So,
understand that. I know that.
You know, we provide services to people who are severely and persistently mentally ill and who struggle with severe substance use issues, who may be homeless, who may be developmentally disabled, and they are not always welcomed with open arms.
Okay, what can I do? What can I do in a neighborhood that I know there are all these homeless people and all this problem? Everybody's got many, many problems. What can I do as a citizen? I'm interested. I want to help.
Well, you're doing part of it right now is using your voice, and just continue to do that. Speaking up, being supportive when you're hearing that somebody's wanting to use one of those buildings, and maybe at a city council meeting and is wanting to talk, or a zoning committee, and am I using the right language? Thank you. That's not my area of expertise, but there have been agencies wanting to open and expand and do things in Independence and have been very strongly shut down and told not here.
I'm sure that's true. What is my access to you? I don't know any of you. How do I, or do I? Do I call you? Do I talk with you?
I'll talk to anybody.
Thank you.
And at the end,
I will give you my phone number.
Wonderful, I love it, really, I'm serious. I'm serious, because I run into problems and I don't know what to do with them. And yet I want to help, I want to do something. And I think that we have a really large problem of homeless in Independence. And many people are trying to help. I don't want to disparage anybody that's doing things, but I think that it's got to be more than just the churches. I think it's got to be the community. And how do we, I know this is your problem as well. How do we do that? How do we get the word out? How do we, even this town meeting, I talked to a lot that never heard anything about it. I didn't know what was happening. I don't know if they would have come, but they might have had they known about it. So is there some way to get, I know we're so separated and so fragmented, and this COVID has not helped anything, frankly. But I think it's not over. I mean, I think we've got to face the fact that right now the kids, I'm lecturing, I'm sorry, the kids are back at school, and you have access then to families and so on through that, which is great. But when the kids weren't in school, you were not able to do much. And I'm concerned about all of this and want to do what I can to help. And I'll be quiet.
I may come get your phone number.
What I can do, ma'am?
I may come get your phone number.
You want my phone number?
I'll come get it before we're done.
Hey, ma'am, ma'am, over here, if you write down your contact information, I will share it with all of the panel.
Okay, well, I'm with the Unity Center in Independence, whether you've heard about it or not in this situation. My concern is specifically this. I need to know what your vision is, okay? Because I've sat in town halls, I've sat in these same kind of meetings, and I think you have just, your hearts are right. I think you put some thought into your different areas, et cetera. But this is a big elephant, okay? And you're not gonna eat this whole thing at one time. Okay, so coming out of this meeting tonight, what I'm interested in knowing is, what's the first few things we're gonna do? What's the first 2 things we're gonna accomplish? Otherwise, we have another one of these meetings and we have this same open forum like this. We're gonna sit here and we're gonna talk about a lot of important things, but then literally there's no movement forward at all. So what I'm interested in right now is vision. Because we have a facility right now that can give counseling. We have a facility that we can evaluate individuals about whether they're drug related, whether they're have emotional issues, whether they're capable of getting jobs. We've actually been able to get people jobs. We've got doctors in there to give medical treatment. I mean, there's all kinds of things available right now. Okay, but I just need to know what your vision is. Okay, because right now I feel like we got 15 marbles in the air, and you're not going to catch them all. Okay?
So if I could just say, so we had this town hall so that we could get feedback, and post-COVID, it's important to have a meeting. This is one of the, I think, you know, the first meeting, of course, of the health department on mental health. So this is the very first step. So to hear from all of you, that's the first step. Have a meeting, having our tentacles out with people that, like you, sir, and like this lady, you know, we can all have other meetings, but we have to at first meet, first have a plan, and then move forward. And I think this is the very first step, or half a step towards that, but I'm positive that we're gonna get to where we need to be. So that said, does anybody else have a?
I just asked what the vision was. And we didn't, there's no conversation about that.
So the vision here is to
continue to meet.
not to continue to meet, but is to get people's opinions.
Okay.
So I've been back at the health department's been reestablished since July 1. Reestablished in December, but since July 1. So our goal is to take it seriously, which is why we had this first ever town hall on mental health. And then whatever the citizenry wants, look at it, act on it, and get it done. So anybody else have? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to go again, but it led to a question for you, Christina. Maybe to help with that question would be maybe 2 things that the city is already doing, and then maybe a couple of things that are in the plan to do.
So things we're already doing. So I mean, I know our vision is different for everyone. I know it's been discussed in our health department committee meetings multiple times. It's come up, and we've talked about mental health. You know, I have met with Julie. We have talked about it. We've all met. The idea of a crisis intervention center, you know, and the co-responders that Paul talked about. These are things that we're excited and we think would be incredibly beneficial for the city to have. Now, there are a lot of steps that go into having a building, putting together, you know, a joint force to go out and do these responses, and a lot of hoops to jump through. And we are at the very beginning of having those hoops. You know, we are also working our maternal child health grant that we have for this year through the state. Our focus is on teen student mental health, specifically suicide, and working with the school district to get in there and to help with education and help with communication and spreading the word about mental health services and what's available. You know, we're continuing to work with fire, we're continuing to try to work with PD to come up with that co-responder and what it should look like for the city. But I mean, as Diane said, we are at the very beginning baby steps. We had a lot of things that we wanted to do about 5 years ago that got waylaid. You know, COVID has not helped this situation. We have been very focused on testing and vaccinations for the last year. So, I mean, that is where we are. That's where we started. We have our one maternal child health grant. We are discussing the money for ARPA and how those funds should be spent. Getting in front of this and talking about what that future is and what all of the steps are in between. Because, I mean, a crisis intervention center, co-responders, those are not things that just pop up overnight. They're just not. There's a lot of steps and there's a lot of best practices, and we want to do it right. So we know we got to take those steps.
You know, if I could, I want to hit on his question about vision, and I'll speak specifically just for the EMS side of things, and that is that, you know, on average, we're seeing about 6 psych patients a day that we run in our 911 system. And that's a combination of some from the field and some that are in the hospital that are being transferred as far away as Nevada and Maryville, and that's the closest psych hospital that's available. So, you know, kind of the vision for EMS, at least for me, is that we have that reduction in those responses. Not to say that mental health isn't an emergency or isn't a medical condition that needs our attention. It is. But at the same time, if we do a better job getting those people to the right resources the first time, then that reserves our ambulances, and we have limited amounts, that reserves our ambulances to running heart attacks and strokes and car wrecks and things that are absolutely require an ambulance to take care of. So that's one thing. The other thing that I mentioned is overdoses. You know, my vision is that my providers never have to go into a basement of a home and find a dead 14-year-old because she overdosed on heroin. It's traumatic for our people, it's traumatic for the families, and it's senseless when it can be prevented. And so my vision is to work with not only the people at this table, but Epic and ComCare, the people we're already working with, to reduce the recurrence of those overdoses to save lives. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is multiple responses. You know, one of the things that we see is we're running the same people over and over and over again. Sometimes as high as 30 or 40 times in a month, we'll get an EMS response to this one individual. That at times takes away from other people calling 911 who have a higher acuity illness or injury. So my vision is, again, getting those people to Julie and her team through what we call alternate care facilities or alternate destinations. You know, the old model of EMS is, as I said earlier, take to a hospital. That's the only place you can go to. Finding, and that's kind of what Julie and I, when we met a couple years ago, we were starting to look at is, what can EMS do to take a patient to another location where they'll get the care without going to an ER? And that's what we started talking about. That's my vision. Keep those people out of the ERs, free up our ambulances. We can run your call, have a better response time, and take care of the people that absolutely have to have an ambulance for other life-threatening emergencies. So from the EMS perspective, that's my vision.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jeff Foley, and I am a resident of Independence. I am a former two-term mayor of Chillicothe. I have been on planning and zoning boards. I'm a graduate of Brigham Young University in psychology. I've worked at mental institutions and psychiatric units. I'm a former board member of Northwest Missouri Mental Health, and I'm the founding member, one of the founding members of Bridgeway to Hope Shelter in Chillicothe. We have homeless wandering all around Independence, which is a concern to many residents that I've spoken to. I am here tonight representing Center Place Development, Land Development Cooperative that are interested in the McEwen Orphanage with a limited area for the homeless, but not the entire area, which would be a great location at the edge of the city near bus lanes. The group of investors from Utah are eyeing the McEwen Orphanage and would like to enter as a cooperative venture with the City of Independence if it can be constructed sensibly. We have architects and city planners on the team to help us lay out planned unit developments and possibly a TIF district in that area. We're looking at keeping as much land as possible for pro-taxable ventures. Now we know that homelessness is not really a taxable venture, but the McEwen home could actually serve the needs that we're all talking about. But there's a huge part of that land that could be used for taxable ventures, which would help the city. The Steamboat Arabia is needing a location. They're losing their lease in Kansas City. My investors are interested in possibly constructing something out there on that property. And there's also a historical museum in Nebraska going out of business, which they would like to incorporate in this. And we are interested in assisting to make Independence a safer and more secure place as a collective team. We would like to sit down with the city and other officials such as yourself. Thank you.
The mayor would like to speak about the McCune home. And so was that you that had that question about it?
No.
Okay, okay, so I won't ask this, because it's the same.
And Scott and I talked about this in the parking lot on my way in. I'm Eileen Ware, the mayor of Independence. I also represent the city on our Economic Development Council board, along with Councilman Perkins, who is here. There's been many opportunities presented for development of the McCune home for various different purposes. And I, in speaking, Doctor, with organizations like yours, and with Mr. Stoner, and with agencies in Kansas City and all over the area, many people identify the McCune home as an ideal location to create some centralized services. Several years ago, the Pope House was interested in potentially acquiring McCune home for some transitional housing for some of the people that they see who need a place to go after they leave the Pope House. That property is owned by Jackson County. It's inside the city limits of Independence, but it is owned by Jackson County. And the reason I bring up the Economic Development Corporation is because we have had opportunities from private businesses who are interested in acquiring that property, and the county, to this point, has not made that property available. They have not been interested in entertaining any type of offer to purchase or redevelop that property. That's not to say that they wouldn't, but we have an Economic Development Council Management Committee meeting tomorrow, and a project is on that list of something that we're pursuing, that the investor is interested in the McCune home, and the county has not been receptive to any offers or any even opportunity to have a discussion about the use of that property. I don't know if that means that they have plans for it, but I want to get that out there, and I had a town hall meeting on homelessness a few weeks ago, and that comes up repeatedly. But we really need to engage the leadership at Jackson County if there's going to be any forward discussion on utilizing the McCune home.
Mayor, do you know what it would take?
No.
You don't.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
So you were talking about substance abuse and things like that. What is the closest place, if somebody's ODing, so I carry Narcan. I've got a bunch of it in my trailer. If somebody's ODing, and where's the closest place for you guys to take them?
Depends on what part of the city. Obviously, anything east of Nolan Road is going to go to Center Point. More northwest up towards Sugar Creek, looking at the distances, sometimes it makes more sense for us to go to North Kansas City. There are some hospitals that really don't want to see overdose. So, for example, Truman Lakewood, if it's someone that's still unresponsive that may require a breathing tube and a ventilator type support, that's not something that particular hospital is well equipped to take care of. But I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, we're going to go to the closest hospital, which is going to be Center Point. Now, when we're talking outside of the overdose or the substance abuse part, and we're talking about just mental health patients, we're somewhat, from an EMS perspective, stuck in the middle. So there's some hospitals that, say, when we're transporting someone to the hospital, our first question is, what hospital would you like us to take to? And if they're stable enough to go to that hospital, within reason, we're going to take them where they want to go. But most hospitals don't want us to go a distance away and bring a mental health patient to them. They want us to take that to the closest hospital so they can be evaluated in the emergency room and then, if need be, transferred later. So we're, again, kind of stuck in the middle with that. So to answer your root question, though, usually it's Center Point just based off geography.
And Julie, so we get somebody in to treatment wherever. They come out of treatment. Is there a place in Independence for addicts to go to, a recovery house, something like that. What is there in Independence? Is there anything like that in Independence other than Maple House? I mean, is there any kind of, you know, rehab facility, anything like that for men and women to go to?
Post-treatment, like post-residential treatment?
Yeah.
We have a large outpatient treatment program that we have a lot of clients that are actively involved in, that you can stay in as long as necessary. We have one of those here in Independence. We also have one that's in Kansas City. And we have a residential women's program here in Independence. Our men's program is down in Kansas City. Maple House is here in Independence.
Okay, so we could go to comprehensive health and you would be able to get them into
Our substance use program,
Yeah.
the staff in there are well connected with all the resources that are available. And there's actually much more available for transitional housing, recovery housing, and our substance use programs than there is for those of our clients that are dealing with mental health issues.
Okay. Yeah, the transitional housing was kind of, you know, like the Maple House. You know, that's what I was wondering if that's the only one.
They have two providers.
You have two?
They do.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Don't they? Do they have two? Do you know? It's one of my staff, sorry. Maple House, do they have two?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, it's Union House, Independence.
Yep, Union.
There's also an Oxford House in Independence.
Yeah, I think there's several that are advertised, so to speak. I know the inspectors have this list for houses in the city that they use before, so I think there might be more than are totally advertised. They might be independently run or faith-based, or then the ones that you might see that come up like Maple House. I think they're there, they're just like hidden. It's been my experience. Because I didn't know how the inspectors were coming up with Oxford houses that were in this area that are actually around, that someone could go to post-treatment or in between.
Thank you.
I think Beacon House is still open.
Beacon is still going, yeah. I for sure try to take that risk.
Julie, there's been a lot of questions come up about homelessness in our community. How many outreach officers do you have that are available to go out into the community and do the vulnerability assessments to start moving them towards housing?
Like how many of my staff?
Yeah.
We have a whole crisis department, specifically that can respond at any crisis situations that are needed. We have now 3 community behavioral health liaisons specifically designated to work with the police departments. And I have co-responders that we have added as well that can outreach and work with the police departments. We'll be getting those 2 housing liaisons that can outreach specifically geared towards homeless. Gosh, how many am I up to there? 9? So we have a number of staff that are able to respond. We're adding mobile crisis response therapists. We're in the process of implementing the 988 system. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that. That will be the number that anyone can dial for any mental health crisis emergencies. It'll be going into effect July 1st of next year. This will hopefully alleviate the excessive number of mental health calls that are coming into our 911 system. I know they're being inundated with just general mental health informational calls, not even what would be considered an emergency call. That a lot of the dispatchers are handling it within our police departments and 911 systems. So hopefully with the implementation of this 988 number, that will alleviate a lot of the burden of excessive phone calls coming into 911 so that they can take true 911 emergency calls. So that system is being worked on and that infrastructure is being worked on right now. Department of Mental Health has just released a lot of that funding to the current crisis line system so they can build up technology, add additional staff We then, on the community mental health center side, I know we are looking at adding an additional mobile crisis response therapist to be able to respond to that as well, because we then in turn will be expecting an increase in calls ourselves. So we're building up our systems to be able to respond to that as well.
Thank you.
Hi. I recognize that the homeless issue is not going to be solved overnight. However, every day my neighborhood feels more dangerous, and as I take my walks, there's trash everywhere. And so what my community has started to do, my immediate neighbors, is to form groups and take group walks, and we collect the trash. But the problem with that is we don't know what to do with it. I know Kansas City has where you can get blue trash bags for free, and then they have free pickup. Is that something that Independence would be willing to implement so that when community members want to help and assist, we have that available?
Well, I'm not gonna rule it out. I know that we've had different neighborhood groups who do neighborhood cleanups in the past, and we've found ways to support it. It's something that we could look into. I cannot give you a definitive answer. I don't run any of those departments that would have people out there capable of picking up those bags and having a place for them. So I can't speak for the city. I can say that we have done neighborhood cleanups in the past, and that's something that we could look into.
How do we look into that? What's the next step from that?
If I could, so we have a sustainability commission. If you get online, we have a sustainability commission for the City of Independence, and they work with neighborhood groups like yours with Public Works. So you would have to get you in touch with Public Works Department. The citizens, the neighbors pick up trash, they supply the bags, and they pick up and take it to the drop-off depot. So if you contact municipal services, then I'm sure that they would be willing to help assist. But we'd have to ask, but I'm sure that they would do that, because they do that with a different commission.
Yeah, we'll look up the staff liaison, and afterwards, if you come up, I'll give you the staff liaison contact.
Okay, sounds good.
And wanted to address the issue of the mental health of our neighbors that we see on the street. It might be a part of the larger homeless community. My question is, to whom, if we were to use as a resource the faith-based community, the Ministerial Alliance, and a proposal we made, to whom would we make a proposal? Working with the Ministerial Alliance to address the issues of mental health and the homeless on a larger basis, who would we make a proposal to?
I think it depends on what your proposal entails. I mean, if it's something that would require, permitting or zoning changes or, city support of some sort, then that would be something that you would likely either bring to a commission or a board or directly to the council to come speak. It would depend on what your proposal entails in the end.
But the city council is the...
Well, I mean, again, it depends on exactly where it goes and what would be needed. If a law needs to be changed or an ordinance needs to be changed, then the council is the place to be. If it's support of like sustainability commission or something like that, or if it's, getting mental health training or anything, that wouldn't be us. That would be someone like comprehensive mental health to do. It depends on what exactly you would be looking to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you're looking for different ideas or way to get involved, we'd be glad to come out to a meeting to be able to talk or explain some of the different things that we do program-wise or different things educational-wise that we can help with. Or if it's just different brainstorming ideas, I'm all about thinking outside the box and different things that we might be able to do as well.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a comment on the lady back here that talked about the trash in her neighborhood and things left from the homeless. It's not just the homeless that are doing that. We get people seem to discard everything out of their car. Well, not everything, but we've got the Independence is Alive and Well initiative that has had great results, and we're hitting main thoroughfares in the Independence area, and we're picking up the trash, collecting it and all, and yeah, we're hauling it off, we're paying for it to be, but we can't depend on city government for everything, let's just face it, in this day and age. And as neighbors and citizens of the city, we owe it to the city and each other to help our brothers and sisters out. And so when you see a piece of trash, best thing to do is pick it up and take care of it. A good friend of mine taught me a lesson a few years back. He says, if you see a piece of trash on the sidewalk, that piece of trash becomes yours. So pick it up. It's just the idea that, you know, we can't, the funding is not there. We need to get to this at grassroots and be citizens of this city and a part of the community, and it will make a difference by taking that initiative on our own, or in a neighborhood group.
I just spoke to a point that I wanted to make. I know all of this, a lot of this costs money. Is there any thought of involving corporate sponsors? Have you done anything along those lines? I don't know what corporations, but there are people out there that, and businesses that depend on independence, and I think they should become involved in finding solutions. It's probably naive, but that's where I'm coming from.
So I do have several questions that are on these cards, and I will just ask them as they are written. Let's see. One says they have a relative that has had a mental breakdown. Why were they sent to Warrensburg? I'm not sure that any of you know, but if they were sent to Warrensburg, is there nothing closer for them to go to? Anybody?
Unfortunately, over the years, we have seen a decrease in the number of psychiatric beds that are available in the Kansas City area. And then when those are full, then we start outreaching to find the next closest one. So I mean, Paul can speak to where he is transporting people to inpatient psychiatric hospitals. I mean, I know they're going to Nevada, Warrensburg. Actually, it does not seem that far, unfortunately, to some of the places they're transporting people these days from this area.
Yeah, at times Warrensburg would be a welcome distance for us. We go as far as Osage Beach, Nevada, Missouri, Maryville, Missouri. So we're traveling well over 100, 150 miles with these mental health patients because it's the closest bed that the hospital can obtain an admin for.
One more question, or a couple more here. If additional funding were available, how would you use it to address mental health in the homeless population?
So fortunately, unfortunately, we are in a situation where funding is really good right now. We're getting additional positions. I have a lot of dollars that are coming into our system. The situation and the current crisis is that I'm having a hard time finding the staff to fill my open position. I can't provide services to the people that need it in the community because I cannot fill the positions that I have open in my agency. I'd like to advertise and market and push out a lot of these great programs and the things that we have ideas about what we're wanting to do and expand on all of these things. And I am fearful to do that because of drawing people into my door and not being able to fulfill what I have advertised and marketed for. Our services have grown 40%. We have increased 40% in the number of people that we have served since 2017. And my staff numbers have tanked in the last 12 months. And we don't have any resumes coming in the door to fill the positions that are open.
So Rio, I think there's a good answer for that in the Independence School District, which with the trauma-informed training that was done, is that something you plan to do again? And if so, when, how often, et cetera, because I think it really,
Are you talking about the community event that we did a couple years ago?
yes.
I know that that is something that, again, we did that in 2019, and then we couldn't do it the following year because of COVID. That's something that our district team has talked about, and I know that we're really interested in continuing that because we had such great collaborative conversations between the different pillars of our community. And so that's something that I know that our team is very interested in continuing because we felt like it was very beneficial to all sit down together and talk about mental health and that trauma-informed care piece for our community and the different aspects that we all feel for our citizens. So yes, we're interested in still doing it.
And this might have been asked before, but it says, how can the city work with private entities to help with homelessness?
I wrote that down and asked it already.
Oh, you did, you wrote it down, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Disregard. Anyone else this evening? Yes, sir.
I'm a licensed general contractor, among other things. And one of the dreams that I've had is I would like to work with the homeless to rebuild these properties. And I need funding to buy these materials. And then I just envision them camping around in their tents and then helping me fix up these properties. And then for the hours that they put into the properties, they'll get like property tax credits for when they get their property, so they can get some credit toward their future, get some skills, because I see a lot of defunct properties and a lot of homeless people. I call this property therapy. You take care of the property, and it takes care of you. That's a term that I created and trademarked, and I have a radio show on it. It's in many states, called the Property Therapy Show. And I know that you can both give and receive property therapy. You can give it to the property by meeting the issues that the property has, give the property therapy, and then you can receive therapy from the property. And one of the things is mental illness helps you have purpose in life, direction, helps calm your mind, restore your reputation, increase your relationships with others, helps open up your future. And that's one of the things that I envision and I would like to see exploring this and help with. I just want to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question? Yes, ma'am.
Are there any programs to help teenagers deal with their mental health and how to calm them down? And are there programs to help parents to deal with their teenagers' mental health? Because as a cop, I see it a lot, and as you know, where parents don't know how to deal with them, how to calm them down, so they ask us because we're trained, but is there any way that we can actually train them on what we know so it can make the 911 calls less and less? It can help us help the other people anyway.
I can kind of start with the school district perspective. I know we have some different programs for our teenagers. So we do the Signs of Suicide, which is a suicide prevention program. Something else that we do in the school district is we have counselors in all of our buildings that will meet with students. Sometimes they'll make safety plans or they'll talk about some of these coping strategies they can use. And I already mentioned our FSLs earlier, but they can help connect outside resources. But something that I know some of our counselors and FSLs do is that they will share these ideas with families, or sometimes they'll have parent meetings and talk about the strategies. Because something that I've found is that things that are helpful for students are also helpful for us as adults. And so just continuing to talk about those strategies and sharing them whenever we do call home or whenever we do have meetings all together. I don't know of a specific program, maybe Julie you might know more specifics about that, but I know that's kind of how the school districts have partnered with, our school district has partnered with families in that way.
We provide services for children and adults. We have several programs geared specifically towards kids. We do have an adolescent substance use program, and then we have a youth community support program. Does require specific criteria to get into that program, but it works with the kids and their parents. It also helps coordinate with schools if there are any concerns there. So we do help provide a lot of education to the parents and families in those situations and work with those kids as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, that might wrap us up. Thank you all for attending. Did you have something? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I just want to thank you for having this opportunity for us to come together and talk about things that maybe we've been ignoring as a community for too long. I want to thank the school district for the Great Circle program, making that available to kids. And I want to challenge us to begin to talk about mental health issues before they become a crisis. So if we were talking with kids from elementary school on about how it's okay to talk about your feelings, how it's okay to grieve, how it's okay to deal with loss in your family, or how it's okay to deal with family members who are addicted. If we made that okay from childhood up, we probably would be able to prevent a lot of these long-term crises that we're now trying to figure out as a community, right? So I would encourage you, as you have these conversations about how to deal with crisis, to also begin to partner with the school districts, with the private schools, with the Boys and Girls Clubs, with all of those agencies, and start talking about how do we talk to kids from a very early age in a very open way, not just in suicide prevention training, not just in identifying the kids who are in a crisis moment, but in saying to them, if we can talk about our mental health issues early on, then maybe we can prevent this stuff from being a crisis later on in adulthood. So thank you for having us here today, Ms. Congress.
Something that I'd like to add about the school district, because I really appreciate you bringing up the point about what we do for crisis response. We do a lot for that. But something that we also have is our school counselors do guidance lessons with every single classroom. I'm talking about the elementary level, where they talk about coping strategies and dealing with big feelings. It varies from building to building what specific topics, because each building might need something a little different. But that prevention piece, I think we can always do more for prevention, but our counselors work really hard to do that. And then we also have staff PD. We have a trauma sensitive schools initiative where we talk about how do we talk to our students about these big feelings they're having, or grief, or just the stress that we've all been experiencing for the last 18 months. But I think that that's something we're continuing to refine and prioritize more. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I do think it's super important to talk about it as early as possible, because mental health is something that we are all dealing with, and it's going to be something we deal with our whole lives. So thank you for bringing that up.
Our entire healthcare system is very reactive in how it works, isn't it? Instead of being preventative on the front end, we're responding to things when it's too late. So if we're much more preventative in our measures and address things very early, our diet, exercising, addressing all these things on the front end, teaching kids mental wellness and all of these things early would be much better. Health, physical health, mental health.
Yeah, I'll just echo all of that. You're preaching to the choir up here. We are absolutely, the reason why our maternal child health grant, why we wanted to focus on getting into the schools, is because we understand that, those mental health problems, they start early on. Those coping mechanisms need to be learned. You need to work with the kids. And so we want to start there so that we can try to lessen the problem later. The city admits that, maybe we haven't always talked about these things. We're trying to communicate better. We're trying to get back and work with those different groups. We have on Facebook, we have Mental Health Mondays, where I know we do posts about mental health. We're trying to be more aware and start that conversation and I guess you could say normalize it a little bit more, because we know that for so long our society has kind of pushed that away and tamped it down, and and we want to address it, and we want to do something about it. So you are preaching to the choir, we want to get in there, we want to work.
Anyone else? Thank you, panelists, for coming this evening, spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you, citizens. We will take the information this evening, the city and the health department, and we will act upon it. I can assure you that. Thank you. Have a good evening.